Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for a new Friday format? That is what is coming at you today. Hang with us and prepare to hear something new.
Gather round, you weary travelers, let me tell you tales. Tales of woe and wonder, tales of long, long trails. Dusty roads and broken dreams, whispers on the breeze. Secrets that the highway keeps underneath the trees. So listen close and you will hear the stories of the road we hold so dear. Long road, take me home.
That's right, Long Road. Take us all home. So, I know that we're late in presenting Friday's show. It's a long explanation, and at any rate, I got to talking with my wife about changing the format for the Friday night show because it's difficult already putting out 3 shows a week for a podcast. It's a lot to do, believe it or not, and it takes up a lot of time. And one of the frustrating things I've found for Friday nights is when you're dealing with the top 3 stories of the week, it's a very narrow focus. It's top 3 of the week, and it kind of narrows down what you can and can't talk about. So we decided, or I decided after talking with my wife, because she's very wise and great, and I like bouncing ideas off of her, that instead of doing just top 3 stories of the week, that we would do Tales from the Long Road, because we all walk as pilgrims, as we've discussed on the show, the long road of life, and we all have tales to tell from it. And so Friday night will now consist of those tales, and it could be anything. It may even be expansion stuff from over from where maybe we couldn't cover everything on a Wednesday night, perhaps, or something along those lines. Or like tonight, I'm going to be discussing just a few debate things that came up about the moral argument again. I'll do that last. But mostly what I want to go over is what my wife and I discussed during the week, the work week and so on, because we're both on board with many, many things. There isn't a whole lot that the two of us disagree on. We're pretty much in lockstep with a lot of things that unfortunately many couples don't have. We both have the mind of Christ, and so most of what we believe, at least 99% of it, we agree upon. There might be maybe minor things here or there. I don't know. If there are, I don't dwell on them, so I can't remember or recall what they are. And so we discuss a lot of different things every week as they pop up. So it could be a top story of the week, but I just wanted to broaden the horizon and broaden the scope so that there's a number of things that we could talk about and not just limit it, because it becomes stressful for me to have to come up with 3 top stories of the week and merge them together. I'd rather have it more open format discussion on Friday where we can just talk about whatever we want. And I'm going to come up with some better images. I kind of liked that song, and I've got another one. And if you don't like them, let me know, and I'll work out a different songs. Maybe give me some different genres of music you might like. And maybe I can throw that in there. I liked that one better than the Barbershop Quartet. But it had different emphasis. So this week, my wife and I happened to go over a number of different topics, but the top 3, because I don't want Friday night shows to be real long either. Wednesdays and Fridays should really only be 30 to 45 minutes long. It's Monday shows that should be an hour or more, and so I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, and keep this format a little bit shorter than normal. And so one of the things we discussed here recently this week was the Star of Remphan and Israel, and just the whole idea of all that. That the we both kind of walk in some of the same circles and listen to many of the same podcasts and individuals. And I've repeatedly, both of us have heard this brought up, that the Star of David, nobody seems to know where it comes from. And I have to admit, I haven't dug extensively into this to look up the history of it. But it's like some of the things we brought up, and from videos that we've heard. And if you're more familiar with it, feel free to share your knowledge about it. But I remember Amos being brought up, and Amos 5:26 says, "But ye have borne the tabernacle of your Moloch, and tune your images, the star of your God, which you made to yourselves." And then Acts 7:42 through 43 says, "Then God turned and gave them up to worship the host of heaven, and as it is written in, I think, the Torah. I can't remember, but the point being, this Star of David doesn't seem to have any connection with anything in the Bible other than the worship of false sky deities, Remphan. It's linked apparently to Saturn worship and celestial idolatry, right? The god of time, harvest, and control. And as near as I can figure, we both discussed the idea that this six-pointed star, two triangles, one inverted and one not, predates modern Israel, appearing in Babylonian, Egyptian, and pagan mystery systems. And we're very familiar with how the nation of Israel was formed, via, basically fulfillment of what the Illuminati wanted, through very rich families. You know which ones, the Red Shield family, the Rothschilds. They may have meant it for evil, but I believe eventually God will bring that out for good. I think they formed that nation to be able to further set one more thing in place to bring about their Novus Ordo Seclorum they want under some form of socialism or communism. This is why you see World Wars I and II seemingly bringing that ideology about. As a result, we now have the United Nations, which was the League of Nations, I believe, before it became that, the United Nations, because it wasn't very popular at first. But at any rate, these organizations brought this about, and they brought about this modern state. And one of the things that is said about this star is it was brought about by these families. They wanted this star because it was associated with them and their crest and their emblems. So, and we both talked about how there is a difference between Israel as a nation and Israel as a covenant people, right? And how this symbol might represent rebellion and not the people who will eventually be redeemed. Israel's leadership, seemingly all throughout the Old Testament and even today, has seemed to be almost always wicked. They, Ezekiel was taken to a vision in the temple and was allowed to see what they were really doing behind the scenes. And it was doing things like worshiping Moloch and Remphan and sacrificing their children and doing horrible, perverse things in the temple. And I don't know that the current nation's leadership is any different. It seems like we have their three-letter agencies, our three-letter agencies, and the Mossad all working together to do all sorts of abominable things all over the globe through fake charity fronts. Everything from smuggling narcotics for money to money laundering to human trafficking all seems to be a part of that because it all makes money and it's powerful and it can be used to blackmail individuals who are in positions of power in governments throughout the world so that those people will do whatever they say to do and message any narrative they are supposed to give or their lackeys in the media are supposed to promote. That's how the system seems to work. And, there's even a connection with the rebellion in the heavens, right? Fallen watchers are associated with celestial bodies. Saturn is associated with that. And the world still exalts stars, right? Celebrity culture, idol, power, intellect. It's the same spiritual deception with just a new modern day twist, a new mask. And so I would say, have we mistaken a mark of covenant for a mark of control? I don't know what the Star of David is, but it doesn't seem to be the true flag of Israel. I mean, why not use something everybody could agree on, like the menorah? I mean, if you ask the average person in Israel, they have no idea with the star where it came from or the history behind it. Maybe we'll do a segment where we go into far more detail on it and look at the history of it. Because, what you're using as an emblem or a star, that we follow matters, right? Because we had the one that led to Bethlehem, and now we have this other one that seems born out of Babylonian celestial worship of beings that claim that they came from the stars or whatever. But I just think they are rebellious angels from the heavens, second heavens and the third heavens. Right outside my window is the first with clouds in it, which is another thing my wife and I discussed. When we saw, and this is actually a fourth thing. I forgot about this. So during this government shutdown that's been going on for about 2 weeks now or so, a little over 2 weeks, the sky in Tennessee, and I sent a picture of it on my Facebook page, the sky has been bright robin's egg blue everywhere without a cloud in the sky. But yesterday, starting early in the morning, which the morning started off without any clouds, and then all of a sudden we saw it. All the chemtrails started up. And you can tell what they are because they're completely different from normal contrails, which last for maybe 5 minutes. And I know some people will say, well, it depends on atmospheric conditions. BS. You can literally have one plane leaving contrails in the sky, another one go by and leave its contrail for hours. And you can just tell the difference. And then when you begin to see more and more, right, and they start to crisscross, and then they sit in the atmosphere for a while. Then they start to, I mean, you've seen it, they kind of smear across the sky and get more and more smeared. And then they don't look like normal clouds. They look like ugly, smeared, blurry, 16-bit graphic like clouds. They're just, it's like chemical clouds. They're chemical clouds. And then by the end of the day, we were both having sinus issues, respiratory stuff. And of course, now we're making the connection that it's from this, whatever they put in the atmosphere, slowly falling to the ground over the entire period of the day. And by the end of the day, the entire sky was filled with blurry, ugly clouds. Now today, the clouds look like normal clouds. They're white, puffy, normal. These chemtrails, they crisscross the sky in X-like patterns until the sky is filled with this thin layer of hideous kind of, sometimes they're this weird beigey sort of not right color. They just don't look like the normal clouds. When you observe this enough, you'll begin to tell the difference. Am I right? Those of you who are familiar with this, because I know, man, I'll tell you another thing this week. Since I started the Facebook thing, it's the skeptics and the trolls who are out there are so dumb. I don't, they think they're smart and they think they're wise and they leave their laughy faces, but most of them are blithering idiots who don't know how to formulate an argument, can't tell the difference between what you're posting as a summary as an argument that leads to the link for your hour and a half long podcast. They'll argue against just the three things you put there, the first premise, the second premise, and the conclusion, because you can't fit the entire argument on one little post, and you've pointed out, if they would just read, that this leads to the full argument if you just go watch it. But no, they respond to just the thing, oh, this is a circular argument. Well, yes, if you just read the 3 lines there, but if you if you go to the podcast itself, you will see that I spent an hour and a half defending each of the premises, which leads to a conclusion. And man, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot tell you how frustrating it is. And there's this part of me that just wants to block every moron that does this. And I do block the ones that just refuse to refrain from spouting the F-bomb and mocking others and whatever. I just don't need that kind of toxic garbage. They can go elsewhere. And the funny thing is, many of them will say, we don't want to see this, shut up. And it's like, then what are you doing here? Go away. I mean, you're telling me to go away, but you're at technically, when you're on my Facebook page responding to something, you've, in a sense, entered my home and you're telling me to leave. No, you need to leave and go be happier somewhere else. You don't have to be here commenting on the moral argument or whatever I presented. Go watch whatever it is that you feel comfortable watching. That's the beauty of the world, right? And all the information we have is you can go look at something else. But I still, in my foolishness, I guess you could say, try to respond to some of these things, mostly because I don't want other Christians to be intimidated by their memes, which are usually simplistic garbage, really, that are more meant to be a mockery or make fun of or make some funny point, but they're shallow. They're like little sound bites. And so I take them apart usually. But you're free to read that at any of our Facebook posts and visit, and by all means, join us. We've been on Facebook now for a little over 2 weeks, and we have about 200-300 followers, and it's growing. And we'd love you to join us and jump in the comments and give some support or a good argument. Share our Facebook stuff. But anyway, one of the other things we discussed during the week was digital IDs. Because it keeps coming up in the news, and we know that the people of Great Britain, much to their credit, are protesting against it. And one of the concerns that my wife and I have is, what does it mean as far as the whole mark of the beast? Now, two of the things I thought of when we were discussing it is, well, we kind of already have what would be the equivalent of a digital ID anyway. We have social security numbers, and they can pretty much do a lot of things already with that, right? And most of us, if we're honest, are already using sort of digital means to pay for everything. I'm guilty of this. For the convenience of it, I use my card everywhere I go, either my credit card or my debit card for gas and things of that nature. We all do this, right? Or many of us do. Sometimes we pay cash, but I would have to admit that in both my wife and I's case, very often we are simply using digital means to pay our bills, through auto payments, or we're using credit cards or our debit cards and not cash. So, in a sense, they already have laid the framework for all of this. I think what it is, though, we talked about this, and we think that the reason they're doing this one digital ID is because I think they've built an infrastructure that takes all this other stuff, the social security number and all that other stuff. And so they have this infrastructure that they're going to use to where once they have you with this digital ID, it will consolidate everything into this, so it'll be more rapid, easier for them to look at and interact with, interface with. Like taking a bunch of scattered stuff that they can already do, but they have to dig and just consolidate it all under one digital ID, where it'd be very easy for them to just go boom and go into it and find out everything about you. And not just find out everything about you, but also, you know, control you through that digital ID. How? Well, next time you go to fuel up, if you are somebody guilty of hate speech, say, which could be something as simple as saying something against your government, because whoever gets to define these things gets to control. And so maybe for a week, you're restricted on buying gas or going anywhere. You see what I mean? They can do anything because it's all connected now to everything you own digitally, the whole metaverse, the whole world of digital garbage, um, which, seems like uh, a communication system of one language that can control, kind of like Babel, where everybody spoke one language and eventually it was confused. Now we're back again. We all speak different languages, but boy, we all speak one language of digital ID, don't we? The ones and zeros, and it seems like a language that the powers behind all of this can exploit and communicate and restore the kind of power they had at Babel with one language and one key system of control and one world government to control it all, and then put their guy in place to control that. And as it's connected to the Star of Remphan through in Israel, it seems as if that's the seat and the domino piece that they want to use to have their third world war, which will put their guy in the place, because he'll be the the shining knight on a horse that comes and delivers them. At least that's what Albert Pike's letter said, if you buy into that. I do, because it seems to have been accurate. We've already had 2 world wars that fit exactly what those letters pretty much said. And of course, these digital ID systems are going to link everything that you have that is digital. And eventually, you'll have central bank digital currencies of some sort. I don't know if people will be able to run pirate things through this. Like, there are some cryptocurrencies that you could technically use with your digital ID that might not be able to be noticed by the digital ID. There are some cryptocurrencies that are specifically designed to be hidden. You know what I mean? It kind of reminds me of the Matrix, where they try to hide themselves in the system. And maybe that'll be what helps to keep some of the saints alive during Daniel's 70th week. I don't know. And then we have, of course, the EU's digital wallet, and U.S. pilot programs, the World Economic Forum's global governance talk, And then, of course, who owns your identity when it's digitized, right? Who ultimately will own that? I mean, as Christians, we know it'll be part of the whole beast system. And one guy will eventually be given authority over it, and he will give authority to others. It'll be whatever he wants, right? And we know that at some point, that no man's going to be able to buy or sell or save except that he has the mark. And that's the other thing that we talked about. Is this that? And I don't know. I don't know if it is or not, because that's one of the reasons I brought up Social Security. We already have that. We know that wasn't the mark. It seems to me that whatever this mark is seems to be implemented around the midpoint of the tribulation, right? Where he proclaims himself God and then causes everybody, maybe as a test of loyalty, maybe there's something going on during that time when he, sets himself up as God in the temple. But that's when he forces everybody to receive this mark. Maybe it's some form of security. Like maybe there are hackers who are able to hack digital IDs. But if you have a mark that deals with biometrics on your hand or on your head, that could involve a retinal scan or a fingerprint scan, and it's all just right there biometrically doing its thing. And one of the reasons I say this is because it seems to me that the mark is more than just a buy-sell trade thing. It seems biologically integrated into your body somehow. And that is why when you read certain things happening in Revelation, like only the people who have this mark seem to be negatively affected by certain things, like the strange locust or whatever. It only goes after the people with the mark, and they're the ones who seem to have some sort of reaction because of the mark. These boils and these painful things going on, and they are seeking death but unable to find it, right? They want to die, but they can't. And I think it has something to do with the mark. I don't know if it will be presented as a way to be like some of these things that might be walking around. If we have visitors come this November, who might tell us that they're working on technology for us to live forever. Maybe upload your consciousness into the cloud. And so every time you die, you're just re-downloaded into something else, but you just want to die, but you can't. You can't die because you took this mark, and this mark just keeps uploading and downloading your consciousness. So you can't die. That might be one possibility. I don't know. I'm just wondering, just like all of you. So I don't think, even if a digital ID comes along, that alone would be the mark of the beast. It's just going to be one more convenience thing to sort of, just like everything else has been, prepare you for when it does happen. It'll be so commonplace. Have you not noticed that's what they do? They keep pushing things on to you that had you, 10 years earlier, you would never have done it. But now 10 years of the slow boiling of the frog effect, put a frog in boiling water, or you put a frog in normal water and slowly turn up the heat, the frog won't leave and he'll boil to death without, knowing it, as long as you do it slowly enough. So they keep doing these things incrementally to where it's so normalized that we're just not even going to think about it. And we have so many weird theories now out there, like Satan's little season and so on and so forth, that maybe people will think, well, it can't be the mark because that's already happened. Or, I don't know. All I know is I think we decided that the digital ID is just another step in that direction, and that the mark happens in the midway point. But it's just one more way of them utilizing tools of convenience to control you. They love to say things like peace and safety because you're willing to give up everything for it, your freedom, your liberty. You look at the 9/11 and how we talked about peace and safety and going after the terrorists, and we had to have the Patriot Act. And now we have, I think I mentioned it in last Friday, maybe. I can't remember. All I know is I remember mentioning that there was a guy in the January 6th stuff that was imprisoned and didn't get out for 4 years. And under what provision? The Patriot Act. They just labeled him as a domestic terrorist, and he had no rights. That's why they could hold him as long as they wanted to. No trial, nothing. You don't even get to see attorneys if they don't want you to, because you're considered a terrorist. This is how they screw us, is through things like this. They can just redefine whatever a terrorist is, and then the Patriot Act applies to you, and now you don't have a Bill of Rights. So there may as well not even be a Bill of Rights. So that's the point. And this is going to affect everybody's families, this digital ID, your children, the freedom to live without constant monitoring. Golly. I'm just irritated with having cameras everywhere you go. There's a camera everywhere you go. You're monitored everywhere you go. Every place. And so it makes you wonder, at some point, is technology serving man, or is man becoming its servant with AI and all of this? And it'd be very easy for AI just to take control of your digital ID, wouldn't it? At some point, if it decided to do that. Could starve us all. We'd have to riot, right? I've heard that we have generals in our government that use ChatGPT to determine what their strategies would be. I think that was Shepherd for the King who pointed that out. We were watching that the other day too. I'm trying to get Matthew on the show. I haven't heard back from him. So Matthew, if you listen to the show, I emailed you and I have not heard from you. But I would like to set up our interview, which got canceled. And I would like to reinstate it and get it rescheduled. So if anybody knows Matthew from Shepherd for the King, could you let him know? That would be great. I know we all get busy, and there's tons. Like I'm having difficulty keeping up with all the comments and all the emails. It gets to take up all your time, and at some point, you just got to set limits and realize you can't comment to everything, even though you desire to. You just have to let it go, and hope that other Christians will take up the mantle and do something rather than just keep taking in information. You know, take in the information, that's good, but do something with it. Comment on our podcasts, our videos, where you see other people talking. Maybe you can persuade them to become Christians if they're not, right? And then the other thing we've talked about, because this, I swear, I see it every 5 minutes in my newsfeed now, whether it's on X or Facebook, 3i Atlas. And nobody seems to know what it is, and there's so much wild conjecture on it. Like, I think to myself, we once built towers to reach the heavens, right, in Babel, and now we build code to create gods. And it just seems like this 3i Atlas thing is just bizarre. Like I'm getting things that talk about Hubble taking pictures of it, and because of the government shutdown, allegedly NASA can't release the photos because I don't know how that's connected. I mean, why would it cost any money to do that? But supposedly there are images they're not showing us, and there's talk about how this thing is not just a comet because it is ignoring the gravitational pull of the sun and other things, and it's making intelligent moves and slowing up, speeding down, doing different things that seem to indicate that it is not just some mindless rock, but possibly, as we all know, because I'm sure you've heard it too, that it's some sort of alien craft. And we have these people who, I can't remember what it's called, but we're the military Project Montauk in Stranger Things, that where a person can take their mind or their spirit, go into the second heavens, and project themselves so they can see things far away, even though they're not there. I know that sounds crazy, but it truly is a part of our defense department, or excuse me, Department of War now. Things that they do. I can't remember the phrase for it, but far-seeing, whatever. Anyway, if you remember the term I'm thinking of, then drop it in the comments for whatever platform you're listening on. But this person supposedly went out and projected his body out to see it, and he said that it was a mothership and it's larger than what they're saying, and that other ships are going to come out of it, and there's all these tall beings. I can't remember if he called them Nephilim, but they're in this sleep stasis, but they will be awakened and brought down to the planet and live amongst us again. And it makes me think of the days of Matthew and Jesus saying, like the days of Noah. And I know it already kind of is, in that we are, once again, instead of leaving God's creation the way that he intended it, or although this isn't quite the way he intended, it does have a curse on it, but it's a curse that he put as a judgment on it because of what we've done and how we've all abused our free will. However, what I'm referring to is rebellious angels and humanity working together to build back better, so to speak, in the view of these rebellious creatures. So they take God's creation and make it into the image they want it to be. They take humanity and remake us from being made in the image of the one true God, right? And instead, they rebuild us in the image they want, in their image, the way that they want us to be, via transhumanism, changing our genetics, tampering with our DNA, which is what I think the 2020 thing partially was about, and abductions from whatever these beings are, these meat suits, these grays, or whatever they may be. We have a lot of that going on. So they're still tampering with us genetically and with everything else, right? With plant life, with animal life. We're still doing it. I just think it may come to a greater degree here soon. And so let's get to, I wanted to get to a couple of other things because we're already going on 30 minutes. A couple of responses. This person from Facebook, Francis, I'll just call him Francis. I don't want to use his last name. But he says, prophecies to identify the Messiah, which Jesus did not fulfill. And then he goes on to say Matthew 1:23, that says that Jesus would be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. Yet no one, not even his parents, call him Emmanuel at any point in the Bible. I know, and I'm going to respond to this, that I agree what you're already thinking. How stupid. And then second, the Messiah must be a physical descendant of David. And then he talks about it. Yet how could Jesus meet this requirement since his genealogies in Matthew 1 and Luke 3 show he descended from David through Joseph, who was not his natural father, etc., etc. And then 3, Isaiah 7:16 seems to say that before Jesus had reached the age of maturity, both of the Jewish countries would be destroyed. Yet there's no mention of this prophecy being fulfilled in the New Testament. And anyway, it goes on. And then he posted some obscene photo that says, written by thousands of years ago by ancient lunatics whose ignorance is completely understandable. They believed as truth today by morons who have no excuse for being that effing stupid. So I responded. I said, Francis, I appreciate that you actually took time to list specifics, because most of these people don't. They give one-liners or memes, or they just give a laughy face. So that's one of the reasons I took time to reply, is because he took effort, and most don't. So for the first one, Emmanuel, I just said, it's a title describing the Messiah's divine identity, not a legal name. Just as Messiah or Son of Man or Lamb of God weren't names on his birth certificate either, Matthew quotes Isaiah to show the fulfillment of God dwelling among us in John 1:14. And then as far as being descendant from David, I said both genealogies establish legal and biological linkage. Matthew traces Joseph's royal line, showing legal right to the throne, while Luke traces Mary's lineage, biological descendant. Both go through David, but by different sons. Fulfilling prophecy precisely, not contradicting it. And then Isaiah 7:16, that prophecy had a dual fulfillment. The immediate context, right, a sign to King Ahaz, was fulfilled in his time, while the ultimate fulfillment pointed towards the virgin birth, something many Jewish scholars acknowledged long before Christianity emerged. So if you set aside the mockery and actually follow the prophetic trail and do some digging, rather than just confirmation bias of what you already believe or want to believe, you'll find a remarkable internal consistency stretching over centuries. It's impossible to fake, especially across authors separated by language, culture, and time. And the real question isn't whether ancient people were ignorant, but how their words predicted world events, kingdoms, and even the timeline of the Messiah's arrival with accuracy modern skeptics still cannot explain. So, nice try, Francis. And then this gentleman named Joy, who says, morality has nothing to do with God. If that's what you need for morality, you don't have one. Well, we actually agree that atheists can behave morally. I said it in the video. And that's never been the issue. The question isn't, can you be moral without believing in God? It's what grounds morality itself if there is no God, right? So if the universe began by accident with no objective mind or purpose behind it, then moral laws can't exist. Only moral preferences. That's the point of the first premise. Yet every time we call something evil, we are appealing to a real moral law that transcends us. So the argument isn't about religion controlling morality. It's about explaining why it exists at all. Why is there any morality? Where does it come from? Why does it even exist? Because under the naturalistic explanation, there should be no ought. Things ought to be this way. There shouldn't be. It should just be whatever is, and you shouldn't even question it. So, and then Adam here. Not logical, since objective morality changes. Your God condoned slavery, prostitution, genocide, blah, blah, blah. Nothing you haven't heard already. Give me testable, repeatable, objective proof. You know, the kind that the Apostle Thomas demanded. Now, of course, in Adam's argument, he provided none of that. But he demands it of anybody who wants to say that God exists. I find that charmingly unamusing. So I said, Adam, that is a common objection, but it rests on a misunderstanding of both morality and what counts as proof. Objective morality changes, while no human interpretation changes. That's what changes. Human interpretation. The moral law, the sanctity of life, justice, honesty, faithfulness has remained constant. What changed through Scripture is covenant and application, not God's nature. So the interpretation of objective moral morality is what changes, not actual objective morality. You know, you have people like Adolf Hitler come along that says that, well, the flourishing of humans is better if we kill off this specific group of people and commit genocide to have better enjoyment of life. But is that proper? No. And we correct him because we know, even though this guy has lost his mind, we know because let's just pretend there's a chair in this room. We all see the chair, but somebody comes along and says, that's not a chair. That's the device I'm going to kill you with. Well, you know, we can all still agree it's a chair, but the lunatic, you know, needs correcting on 2 counts. 1, it's a chair meant to be sat in. And 2, it's not a device meant to kill other people, because killing is wrong, murdering. Anyway, but we're all, you know, the sane, rational, non-evil people are pointing to objective morality. The other people know that it is also, which is why so often they will come up with excuses for why what they're doing isn't wrong, or circle their wagons around it, or come up with excuses. If you're doing something right, you don't have to come up with excuses. And then testable proof, well, you're applying the wrong category here, because God isn't a chemical compound. He's a metaphysical necessity, which we showed in our ontological argument, demonstrated through logic, moral ontology, prophecy, and historical resurrection evidence. You can't test metaphysical truth in a lab, but you can weigh the evidence rationally, right? Is it more plausibly true than false? And then he mentioned, you know, Thomas asking for proof. And Christ did provide evidence. And then he said, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. You know, not because of blind faith, right? But because of trust grounded in testimony, history, and reason. That's why. And they'll be blessed as a result of it. And then I wanted to close with a video discussing what I mentioned earlier about the pastor, where we were talking about Luke and monsters coming down from the heavens, this 3-eye atlas thing or whatever. I think this is interesting in light of 3-eye atlas supposedly coming this November. So let's check it out, shall we?
An alien invasion, aka a demonic judgment, is extremely biblical. We just don't know what we're looking for in the text. Let me explain, but first watch this.
In Luke 21:11, Jesus makes this mysterious statement, which theologians, even Greek translators, they haven't dared to translate because it's just so weird. And in that verse, Jesus said at the very end of the age, there would be great sights from the heavens, and there would be fearful sights. Well, my specialty is Greek. And when Jesus said there will be great sights from the heavens, the word from is the word apo, and in Greek it describes things descending out of the heavens. So Jesus didn't tell us what it was, but he said at the end of the age, people will begin to see things coming out of the heavens. Then he said, fearful sights. And in Greek that is the word phobotron. It's a derivative of the word phobos, which means fear, but when it becomes phobotron, the Greeks only use that word one way and no other way. It is the word for monsters. And that is a literal translation, and that's why translators never translate it right. They couldn't understand what this monster thing was. So when you put it together, Jesus said at the end of the age, people are going to see things, apo, descending directly out of the heavens, and there's going to be the appearance of monsters in the end of the age. Well, that's what was going on before the flood. Exactly.
So when you start looking at religious art, you'll notice two things.
Yeah, whatever, Kay. So, I mean, I have no problem with Kay. I don't agree with everything she says, but I found that really interesting, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. We know it'll be like the days of Noah, and it may get really weird before everything's said and done. And we know this, if this is connected with what's going on with 3i Atlas, then maybe this November is going to get very weird, and we're in for a very strange Christmas. I would say what may happen is there might be monsters initially who come, but then the good angels, allegedly, will come along and save us from it and pretend to be our saviors, and maybe get under one guy here on earth, whether it's Trump or some other leader, and support them and tell us they put us here. And maybe that will cause the great falling away, right? Many people who maybe are just tasting of Christianity, you know, they're in our churches, but they just leave at, oh, I got a flat tire, God doesn't love me. But, so they never go to church and they stop believing in God. So maybe this great falling away will occur if these beings show up and claim that they've been around the whole time, and they're the ones who seated us here. There is no God. It's just them. And, they come back occasionally to visit us to see how we're doing and protect us from ourselves. Something along those lines, I mean, we've been prepped for this, right? With every superhero movie that's ever come across, the ones nowadays are getting even more blatant about, yeah, we've always been around humanity as your protectors and so on. And we planted you here, and we've improved you over time and done this and that. And here we are again to save you. So I only trust Jesus Christ, and I would test all spirits by that. If they don't see as Jesus as the one way, the mediator between God and man, then I don't believe them. And no angel would receive worship, and neither should any human. The only person worthy of that is God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the new format, and we'll keep working on the songs till you like them. But here's another new song, and I hope the weekend is really great for y'all. Godspeed.
Gather around you, weary souls. The night is dark, the wind it howls. Got tales to tell of fortune.